And next we have Lucy Ballantyne from Lochaber Fisheries Trust. She's been the biologist there for the past 14 years and is going to give us the picture from Lochaber's side of things. So Lucy, if you just want to kick off when you're ready, thanks very much.
Sorry, I was muted and I couldn't work out how to unmute it. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, right. So, yeah, I'm Lucy Ballantyne. We've been monitoring sea lice and wild fish for probably 20 years now. And basically, the reason we do this is to understand the interaction between the lice on the farm fish and the wild fish. It isn't just us that does it. It happens up and down the West Coast. Did that move the slide on?
I am only seeing the full PowerPoint, so I don't know if you would like to go into presenter mode.
How do I do that?
So I can't see your cursor. There's a bottom. Okay, yeah. You want to share the screen again?
So, slideshow. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Right. Okay. So, basically, yeah, as I say, we monitor lice up and down the West Coast. So from Argyll to the Outer Hebrides. We've been doing it for many years now. Some of that data has been used by Marine Scotland Science in 2013 to look at the relationship between sea lice levels on sea trout and fish farm activity. And that paper identified there was a correlation between the number of lice on the wild fish and the distance from the fish farms, with an impact noted up to 32 kilometres away. So we're seeing that there is potentially an impact on our wild fish from aquaculture. However, we also recognise that aquaculture is a really important provider of jobs on the West Coast and for income to Scotland as a whole. There is a move to expand the industry, and although options such as closed or semi-enclosed containment are starting to be discussed, we're probably still quite a long way away from that. So what we really need to do is be able to advise how we can expand the industry without having a negative impact on wild fish. And in the past, we've really struggled to do this because we didn't have an awful lot of information about how salmon are migrating across the coast. And we didn't either understand how the lice might be dispersing from farms. But work in the last 3 or 4 years has really helped with this. So we now have tracking projects showing these migration routes and the timings of salmon out to sea. The fish farmers are also producing lice dispersion models. So they're using tidal and wind data to predict where the lice are going to move to and where they may accumulate in hotspots. Then we've also got SEPA, who've produced the risk-based framework for managing the interaction between sea lice and fish farms. And I know Peter Pollard's talking after me, so he'll be able to explain more about that. And then the final thing we're doing is we're doing these environment management plans. And that's basically a condition of a planning application where the fish farms are asked to monitor the wild fish and the lice on the wild fish and to feed that data back into their management of lice on the farms. So we're at quite an exciting time where soon we'll understand more about how salmon are using the coast on the migration routes, where the lice hotspots are likely to be. And now we can monitor these migration routes or the lice hotspots to better understand the interactions between farm lice and wild fish. But to do that, we have to catch some fish, some wild fish. So in the past, we've relied on seine netting, which is a fantastic technique, but it doesn't work in every situation. So it's limited by the terrain you can use it. And I've always found the weather as well. So we started looking at other methods. And in Norway and Ireland, they use these coastal Fyke nets. It's a pretty simple thing. So in this photo, you can kind of see out to sea here underwater, there's a Fyke net. And then on the front of that, there's just this long leader and some wings. So the fish swims along the shore, it hits the leader and it gets directed out into the net, at which point it kind of comes into this heart section and gets funneled further into the Fyke net. And once it's in the Fyke net, it can't get out and it just gets held there until we monitor it. We spent 2 years kind of making this work really well. We've used it in a variety of settings and we found it to be really successful. So the advantages of the fixed net are that it's fishing for 24 hours a day. So you're catching fish throughout that time rather than seine netting, which is maybe an hour or two. Because the net's in the place all the time, the fish become more habituated to it, so they're less wary. It can be deployed in a wider variety of coastal terrain and it's less affected by the weather. And also because these are quite big nets and to deploy them and to check them, we rely on fish farm assistance. It does mean that you're out there every day showing the fish farmers your work, understanding their work, and it's a really good relationship builder with that as well. So we've suddenly caught loads of fish, and what are we going to do next? So for each fish, we measure and weigh the fish. The weight's really important, and thank you to Alan for your excellent explanation of Taringer, so I don't have to try it. We record the number of lice of each lice stage for each fish, and then we use the weight and the number of lice to estimate the survival of that fish. So the rest of my talk, I'm going to be talking about the Upper Linnhe system. Loch Linnhe basically runs from Fort William in the north down to the Sound of Mull. It has two farm management areas, Upper Linnhe and Lower Linnhe, and today we'll be talking about Upper. So you can see here there are 3 fish farms, which are the orange diamonds. And actually these fish farms have historically, or in the last few cycles, had really good lice control. So they use cleaner fish very effectively, and their lice levels have been pretty good over the last few cycles. We've got the River Lochaber coming in at the north, which is quite a big, important salmon river. And then we've got the Nevis, Coe and Leven, which also have salmon, and some other smaller sea trout rivers feeding into the system. And we've got 2 netting stations. So at the top, you can see there's that net 2. We've been monitoring there for nearly 20 years now. So we've got an awful lot of data. So if we just focus on the orange columns here, that's the abundance. So that's the average number of lice per wild fish caught. That includes all the fish and just the average number of lice. And as with Alan's data, you can see we had this up-down 2-year cycle, with the even numbers being the first year of production, when the fish haven't been in the sea very long, the farm fish haven't been in the sea long, and they haven't had a chance really to get many lice. And then the second year of production, by now the fish have been in the farm quite a long time, and the lice have been reproducing quite well. So you can see, although there is this 2-year up-down cycle, I think there's a gradual decline as you move through time, apart from 2017, which was an incredibly dry spring. It was basically dry and warm from March through to July, and sea lice were horrendous everywhere that year. So if we ignore 2017, I think you could probably say there is a general decline over time of the peaks in lice numbers. However, 2021 kind of bucked that trend in a way that we're quite worried about. So in December 2020, we started seeing high lice levels on the farms. We got in contact with the farms to ask what was going on and could they treat. And by February, they had treated. But by then, the levels had been really high for a long time. So there were a lot of lice accumulating in the wild, and the farmed fish got reinfested really quickly. So jump forward to the migration period. So here we've got data. This is farmed lice data, adult numbers, adult females per lice fish. And from week 17, which is the beginning of the salmon smolt period, you can see that the numbers were getting quite high. And although these numbers themselves don't sound massive, you know, you think 2 lice per fish, is it that bad? But bearing in mind that even when the farm is half full, there might be 500,000 fish in there. So that's 1 million fish. If each fish, sorry, 1 million lice, and each louse can lay between 140 to 580 eggs. So we're looking maybe between 140 to 580 million eggs being released into the wild every 10 or 15 days. So it is quite a serious problem. We caught quite a large sample of fish this year. We caught 420 fish between seine netting and the coastal Fyke net, which I showed you before. It was mainly sea trout, and most of them were showing quite high levels of infestation. When we applied the survival estimates, lice per gram of fish, we calculated that 85% of the sea trout we caught had sea lice burdens likely to cause mortality. So 85% of the fish were likely to die. We looked at that over a time period, and you can see here these percentage risks are the same that Alan spoke about in his talk. So the red is obviously 100% risk of mortality, and you can see that the first 4 weeks that we were doing survey, it was very much dominated by red. And then the farms basically took all of their fish out of the farms by the 5th of July. And the situation improved really rapidly after that. It's interesting that it did improve so rapidly, because usually once the wild fish have got these high levels of infestation, they almost like keep infecting each other rather than, so even if the farms are fallow, usually then the wild fish keep infecting each other. And we didn't see that. We also didn't see fish that, you know, often when you catch them and they have early stage lice, a week later you'll go and they'll have the next stage of lice. And we never saw that either. And neither did we see fish that had obviously been into fresh water, got rid of their lice and come back. You often see that fish have got a lot of lice damage, but not many lice. We didn't see any of these things. And all of those things lead me to believe that a lot of the fish that we caught just basically died of their lice infestations very early on. And the data supports that. Okay, so 85% death is quite a scary figure, but I sometimes think that a picture tells 1,000 words. So here are some photographs of the lice. So these are obviously all early stages of lice, but it's also quite a small smolt. And it is quite upsetting when you see some of these fish that have literally been out of the river for 1 or 2 days and they're already carrying these sort of lice burdens. You can see there on the dorsal fin that the lice are just like overlaid on top of each other. Again, on all the fins, but also on the body here, you can see high numbers of lice. Yeah, more images. And yeah, I could give you many pictures of these. I've chosen just to put 5 or 6 in, but there were lots of fish that looked like this. And on a fish like this, it's really difficult to count. I mean, you can see there's at least 3 different life stages there, and they're all on top of each other. So how do you count it? You know, you have to just get a rough count and move on, because the fish is already massively stressed. So that was a pretty depressing picture, so I thought I'd better make things a bit lighter at the end. So how is the future looking? Well, the first thing is I will say that we have quite a good relationship with Maui. This year was a bit of a disaster, but I want to keep that dialogue open. I want to get back to that good relationship we used to have, where they have really, you know, immaculate kind of lice data, and they put huge amounts of effort into controlling their lice. We're going to do more lice monitoring as part of the environment management plan, so we'll have more data about these things. Hopefully that will be able to feed into SEPA's regulation framework. So although we had a really depressing summer last year, and it was depressing, I used to love seine netting, and honestly on some days it was just difficult to go out and do it. It was so upsetting. But we are in a really exciting time now that we've got this extra monitoring, and for the first time ever, we've actually got enforceable lice control on the horizon through SEPA. There's still some progress to be made, especially for protecting sea trout, because at the minute that framework doesn't protect sea trout, and it also doesn't really assess the suitability of existing farms. It just looks at new farms. But yeah, and then one last thing, if anyone would like to come and work in Lochaber, which is a really beautiful area, I'll be leaving after 14 very happy years here, because I'm going to go and work for SEPA. So yeah, if you would like a job either as biologist or assistant biologist, we've got 2 positions because we're basically expanding our work. So yeah, keep your eyes open for a job advert. Okay.
Thanks very much, Lucy.